What's up, everybody? It's Pykel with League of Items, and today World Elite was officially killed off in their quest for worlds, and it's very sad. A lot of big World Elite fans in Discord, and they've been a very fun team to watch. They're very talented. So in this video, we're going to go through their last five or so matches against Rare Atom, EDG, FPX, EDG, RNG, as well as their match against LNG, which was today. So we're going to go through those, take a look at pick ban phase, see what teams were kind of doing against them. So in the video, I'll probably give a breakdown of what I think about World Elite first, and then we'll go into the matchups and see how the different teams kind of prepared for them. But before I do that, the one thing I'm going to ask for is for everybody who's watching the video to actually click the like button, because Worlds is coming up. I think I might be able to get some new people checking out the content. So if you could like this video, I'd be interested to see if that actually helps draw new people in. So thanks for watching, as per usual. I am doing a best ball draft right now, so I might go in and out of being focused. But that's that. So first, before we start looking at champions, let's talk about World Elite. So World Elite has a very strong top laner, very strong jungler, a mid laner who is new to the LPL this split, but has played pretty well overall. The team I thought was going to be getting an upgrade in Mole, but for some reason Mole didn't really work out. Then we have Elk and Missing in the bot lane. Elk is a very good AD carry. Missing is a good support. So overall, you have three players, between 3.5 to 4 players who are probably above average for their roles in the LPL, which is obviously saying a lot because the LPL is, in my opinion, the strongest region in the world in terms of talent. So Breathe can play carry top laners, can play tank top laners, but generally we want Breathe on playmaking bruisers or champions that can carry late game. Beishang plays every single jungler that you would need him to. I don't think that there are any true weaknesses in Beishang's champion pool, but going through this, we might see that they don't draft amazingly around them. And it's interesting because World Elite probably feels like they have an advantage in a lot of top jungle matchups and also a lot of bot lane matchups. So I see why they kind of go about that. I can see why they go about drafts the way that they do. But we're just going to take a look mostly at scoreboards. So if I was the coach of World Elite, the things that I would be focusing on would probably end up being, you'd want to do two things. You'd want to have your baseline gameplay style where you should probably just be playing around the top half of the map to get advantages and then transfer that lead into the bot lane to help get your AD carry ahead and then snowball and win the game. That's just a good generic way to play League of Legends right now. I know that a lot of the strength of champions on the top side is what people are focused on because they're a little bit flashier and they often make AD carries just not able to play the game. But having that plus an AD carry who can also pump out sustained damage in team fights and protect themselves pretty easily is also very advantageous. So if you create a bot lane advantage for your team, now you have between 3.5 to 4 champions that can just make the other AD carries' life a living hell. And I think that's probably my preferred way to play League, or have teams that I bet on play League. So with World Elite specifically, once you start thinking about the players that are involved, I think that they can always kind of convince themselves to play around topside because Beishang and Breathe are good enough to win matchups where they're not favored. And then that's why I think that's probably also why I still think of Shanks as a question mark, because Shanks isn't the focal point. It's just Shanks has the ability to attach themselves to the upside of Breathe and Beishang. Maybe sometime in the future Shanks is able to be even better, but I think part of the reason why they struggled against these top teams for the past couple of weeks is because of Shanks. Not saying that it's like all Shanks' fault that they're not going to go to Worlds, but it just puts added stress onto the team and how they can play the game. And it's also probably a lot to do with, pick ban and playing around win conditions. So first, let's go to their match against Rare Atom. So going into their match against Rare Atom, before the playoffs started, they probably should have been thought of as underdogs in this spot. So you had Cube against Breathe. I think Breathe is the better player. Leon against Beishang. I think Beishang is the better player. Fofo against Shanks. I don't like Fofo as much as most people, but I would say it's at least even, probably Fofo favored. iBoy and Hong against Elk and Missing. I think that Elk and Missing are just better. So in this matchup, you have Gangplank against Kennen, which we've seen a decent amount. I think it's because Gangplank has an okay matchup into Kennen and can just scale extremely hard. So a lot of teams have been going for this matchup. Viego against Lee Sin. Viego, you can play Viego basically against anything because it always has that the outplay potential and the really high upside. So getting Viego in this spot's good. In the mid lane, LeBlanc against Lissandra. I understand why teams play Lissandra against LeBlanc, but it puts you on the back foot and it's a reactive pick. Like, you're not just going to blind Lissandra generally. You want it to be against something like a LeBlanc. Because when LeBlanc goes in, theoretically you can W her when she comes into you, and you can also ult her when she comes into you, but it's just really not great. I don't know, there's not much else to say about that. We know that Kennen is a strong champion right now, so I think in this spot, without pulling up the pick ban and going through that because it would take a lot more time, I'm just assuming that Rare Atom blind picked the Gnar, didn't really think about the Kennen as much. Getting the Viego this time is a good thing. Volibear's an okay champion. LeBlanc against Azir. I'm pretty sure LeBlanc is supposed to win that matchup as well. And then Ezreal against Kai'Sa. I think Kai'Sa's supposed to win that matchup. I could be wrong about that, but that's just that's my initial reaction, is that the other side is supposed to win that matchup. Sorry. 7-7. So, like, this is the kind of draft where I would consider it a bot centric draft, because you have the Kai'Sa. This I would consider a top side draft, because you're not really going to play around. You're not going to be playing around the Ezreal going down to Ezreal's lane generally for this. Here, Diana Aurelia. Aurelia is a strong champion now again. This is more of a top side of the map draft. I like the idea of this draft. It just didn't go their way. And then in the final match, Olaf against Diana is pretty good. And then again, Ezreal against Kai'Sa. Kai'Sa's just really not as strong as she used to be in a lot of these matchups. She's able to be punished in lane pretty hard, which is not really, a fun thing to play around. It's pretty difficult. So I'm happy that they beat Rare Atom. I had them beating Rare Atom. I think most people did. For DraftKings purposes and live betting purposes. So World Elite against EDG. This is another spot where I knew that you can really kind of easily project what the focuses of the two teams were going to be. I think that Breeze, Beishang, and Shanks were definitely, in my opinion, better than the top side for EDG. I think Flandre, Jai, and Scout are all pretty good, but the heart and soul of EDG is Viper. And that was one of the concerning things about this draft. Going into this matchup, I was talking about Varus specifically, and how getting rid of Varus probably eliminates a lot of EDG's winning chances, because if they win the laning phase hard enough, it'll be difficult for World Elite to actually stay competitive. But World Elite had an amazing series in this match. So then we had Gangplank against Kennen again. So this is a matchup that World Elite and other teams, it's a matchup that other teams are probably going to aim for when they know that Kennen's going to be a powerful champion. So the next level of that is teams that want to play Kennen or are good at Kennen are probably going to have to start banning Gangplank. Then we had another topside. This is an interesting draft. Not really something that I would like to see. Diana Yasuo is a very strong composition, or duo as a part of a larger composition. Viper on a hyper carry, which is always fun. I'm pretty sure that World Elite should have won this game earlier. I think I'm remembering that correctly. The one issue with this kind of team composition is the damage. Like in the late game, I really don't like Ziggs. I know that he can wave clear really well, and if you can lock down the enemy team, maybe you get off a huge ultimate, but it just seems really thin to me. It's like you're inviting all this pressure onto yourself. It's just not. It's just something that I understand that is probably good enough for pro play. I just don't like it. It just feels bad, I think. Then we had. This is more of a top side draft, but EDG also has a top side draft and then the winning bot lane matchup, so that's good for them. And then the final game we had Kennen again. They banned away Gangplank. Jace managed to win that matchup anyways. I feel like if Kennen gets the push here, Jace's life can be kind of difficult. Viego, super good champion. So, I mean, beating EDG, good team, ended up winning Summer. Like, this is why we like World Elite, is because they have the upside of competing and beating a team that will be thought of as a serious world championship contender. Okay.
Okay. I found this on the web.
My phone just decides when to turn on, I guess. So that's basically it for this. I do like utility AD carries against Aphelios. Like, this is a matchup that you should have the pressure in the laning phase, and that is probably the main thing that I'm focused on right now when teams are drafting, is having the easier laning phase for your bot lane. I just think that's the optimal way to draft right now. Who do I want? So there's that. And this was interesting because it was kind of I thought of it as a precursor to the FPX matchup, and that's why I thought FPX was the better side, was because of how I anticipated the drafts going, where EDG would play around Viper and FPX would play around Doinb. Alright, then in their next matchup, it was World Elite against FPX, Breathe against Nuguri. I knew that Kennen was going to be an extremely important champion in this spot, so what World Elite did is they tried to take it away from FPX. FPX was prepared and had a good answer to it in the Gnar, so I'm guessing like the trifecta of top laners right now, Gnar and Gangplank both beat Kennen, but Kennen always has the opportunity to just blow open a team fight with a Slicing Maelstrom. So teams are okay giving up the laning phase to have that playmaking upside. Then Xin Zhao against Viego, that's fine. Shanks against LeBlanc. Shanks is LeBlanc against Doinb's Twisted Fate. I don't know if I really like Twisted Fate for Doinb specifically. Like, he is the playmaker. It does help him roam. But I feel like you're asking for trouble playing that against a LeBlanc. And Shanks had an okay game 5, 2, and 3. And then in the bot lane, I like what they did in the bot lane. I think Varus into Aphelios is fine. Like, I don't have an issue with that at all. I think that draft was pretty okay. The one issue would be the ability to engage. It looks like they're trying to get a lot of poke out of Varus. You poke a little bit with LeBlanc. It's not like skill shot based, but you are trying to chunk out players before team fights. And they had the Blitzcrank, which is always pretty interesting. Good idea because of going against the Thresh. You generally see Blitzcrank around Worlds because there's hyper carries in the meta normally, and Thresh is kind of omnipresent in general. And then second matchup, they kind of flipped the matchup. So we've seen World Elite play Gangplank into Kennen because they think it's a good matchup. FPX says we don't care. Nuguri's one of the best Kennen players in the world, so we're just gonna pick it and see what happens. And they're able to survive the landing phase. 4-2-4 out of 25 kills is pretty horrible. So there must have been a lot of split pushing going on. Diana Yasuo we've seen before. I like the Diana Yasuo composition. Would probably like to see it more with another layer of engage, but that's fine. Viego super strong champion. Aurelia super strong champion. Especially when the other team doesn't have a lot of tanks. And then Varus against Ashe. So you have utility AD carries. When you see a lot of utility AD carries coming in, you know it's a top side of the map draft. It's a top draft. FPX against World Elite in the last game. World Elite tried pulling out the Wukong into Jace, which is a good idea. Didn't work out for them. They were consistently giving up Viego. So Tian being able to play Viego consistently is something I wouldn't expect to happen long term. Again, I'm fine with this matchup. Like, I don't. If you told me that I could have Varus against Aphelios every single game with two similarly skilled teams, then I think the Varus side probably wins more often because it's easier to play towards the Varus win conditions than it is to play against the Aphelios win conditions, which is effectively overcome, like, what's it called? Overpowering, like just surviving long enough and then hitting a gigantic power spike. It's just you have to get there, which is always kind of scary. Then in their following match, we had the rematch of EDG against World Elite. Lucian against Jace. It's fine, I guess. Don't really love it. Olaf against Viego. So Viego is fine. I don't have an issue with this part of the draft either. Syndra against LeBlanc. Don't really have a problem with this either. EDG was playing around Scout, pick banning around Scout. They banned out 3 mid lane champions, which is pretty smart. Then we had Viper and Mako playing the more advantageous bot lane matchup against Elk and Missing. This is what you don't like to see out of World Elite, because like I said in the first matchup, I would prefer to be playing around the top side. Gotta do this. Baker. Yeah, so there's that. Same thing they did in the previous matchup. They liked the Wukong against Jace. Viego is not banned. I'm always pretty surprised when Viego doesn't get picked. Seems good. Yeah, seems good enough. It's a good enough draft. 8-12, very close, went very long. They had the lead. They probably should have won this game, but that's besides the point, I guess. And then this is kind of upsetting. Like, this is a good idea from World Elite. I do think that putting Breathe on the champions like Camille is generally very good. Olaf is fine. Olaf, I think, is actually good against Lee Sin. So I don't really have a problem with their read there. And then Ezreal against Aphelios is always very annoying to watch, because I think that it's just a stupid way to draft. Like, you don't win the laning phase hard enough, and you don't outscale the Aphelios. So, just not really something that I would try doing. It just seems like not a good idea. You're probably better off having a utility AD carry when you have the Camille. And then, so World Elite kind of crashed out of that. Then in the regional finals, they had to play against RNG. So in this spot, Breathe against Xiaohu, probably about even. Beishang against Wei, I think Beishang is a better player. Didn't have a good match here, obviously. Shanks against Cryan, I think they're about the same. Elk against Gala. Personally, I like Elk more than I like Gala. and Missing and Ming are both pretty good supports. Then we had another Wukong game, so Wukong apparently strong according to these teams. Wukong into Jace, the Wukong side is the winning part of that matchup. Olaf against Lee Sin. So World Elite obviously thinks that Olaf is a good matchup into Lee Sin. Didn't go their way for multiple reasons during these games. Then you had the Malzahar against Ryze, which this isn't really matchup based. This is more of like allowing Cryan to have lockdown CC, which is just good in general. Then you have the Ziggs. So I do think that this is a pretty bad team composition as a whole, because you don't really have like reliable sustained damage. It seems kind of wombo combo-ish. So it's a little surprising that they were able to pull it off. I do like the Vayne into the Ziggs. I think that's a good idea. And then, again, not much engaged, not much lockdown. So kind of concerning there. I really don't think Ziggs is that strong. I would expect it to get punished at Worlds. So that's basically it for that one. And then going into the match from today, another Kennen game. So their read, and I think most teams' read, is probably just that Kennen's a very strong champion, even when they have lost the laning phase relatively hard. So Viego against Kennen, I don't know how that matchup goes. I haven't seen much of it. Tarzan against Beishang. Olaf against Diana. The Olaf side is better. Azir against Aurelia. I'm pretty sure the Aurelia side is supposed to win that matchup. I think that Aurelia is thought of as a counter to Azir. So Shanks didn't do a good enough job in that lane, probably because Diana felt pretty weak compared to the Olaf and couldn't take 2v2s. And then we have utility AD carry against Aphelios. If LNG is able to get an early game advantage and Beishang doesn't have the agency to go around creating plays, then having the utility AD carry isn't going to help enough, I think. Then next game, Gwen against Viego. Haven't seen much Gwen throughout playoffs. A Graves game. That's interesting. Could be seeing a lot more Graves coming back, which I'm sure there are some people out there who will be upset by that, because it's not always the most fun League of Legends to watch. Twisted Fate against Orianna. It's fine. I prefer Orianna here. I'm not a huge fan of Twisted Fate in general. Then you had a utility AD carry against a carry bot laner. So this does make sense, because you have two sources of magic damage. You have a jungler who has winning chances against the Graves, even though it's the more volatile side of the matchup. You really have to make stuff happen in the early game. Then, if you get any kind of lead in the bot lane, LNG is never going to be able to catch up. Then, well, I guess I didn't say the lane matchups. I think that Breathe is better than Ale. I think that Beishang and Tarzan are pretty close. I think that Tarzan, I guess, would probably be a little bit better. Icon against Shanks, I think Icon is better. Light and Elwandi against Elk and Missing. I think that Elk and Missing are better. So Set against Aurelia is fine. This is probably just, in their opinion, a good matchup for the Set. But Aurelia is such a annoying champion. Super strong champion right now if you don't punish it hard enough early game. Beishang on Viego. I love Viego, so I totally get that there. Tarzan pulls out a Zac, so we've had, a counter for the Diana. We had a Graves game, we had a Zac game, so a lot of different champions that Tarzan's ready to play, which opens up things in the pick ban phase. World Elite picking Ziggs is just a heartbreaker. I just hate watching teams play Ziggs when you know that you're gonna have to fight the other team. Like, how are you supposed to play Ziggs against Aurelia, Zac, Sylas? I just don't think that's a good idea in these like mid-game team fights, because you have to hit so many skill shots. Aurelia, Sylas, hyper mobile. Just not good enough. Not good enough strategy, I think. Then in the last game, Kennen against Aurelia. I don't know how this matchup goes. I would think that it's just a skill matchup. Olaf against the Viego. I wonder if Olaf is supposed to be Viego. I would think not. Syndra against TF. I prefer the Syndra side because, like I said, I'm not a huge Twisted Fate fan. And then Aphelios Braum against Jinx Thresh. Potentially not enough AP damage, but there's not a lot of there aren't many tanks on LNG side. Like Tarzan is a pseudo tank on Olaf. Braum has some tankiness, but nothing crazy. And that's kind of the story of World Elite. I think that it's pretty, maybe clear is not the right way to say it, but it just seems like the drafts just didn't go their way. Let's take a look at some of the bans against them. Always banning Renekton. So, the Nidalee, that's interesting. Renekton. Because this is like top lane focused, basically. Like the first 3 bans are all topside champions, and also potentially flex champions. Lee Sin, Aurelia, Aphelios. So people are afraid of Elk on the Aphelios. So not only are teams wanting to pick it away, they also have to ban it sometimes. Lee Sin, Renekton. Gave up a lot of Viego games. Oh, I'm reading this wrong. So bans versus, yeah, Xin Zhao, LeBlanc, Jace, Aurelia, Trundle. That's interesting. Ziggs, Jace, LeBlanc, Trundle. So I'm guessing Shanks is probably just like a LeBlanc one trick. So that's why they're basically forcing teams. When teams pick away LeBlanc from World Elite, not only do they get one of the opposing team's best champions, they almost force them to play like Syndra, Lissandra, champions like that. Which is pretty interesting. Banning Ziggs a lot against them. I would think that teams want World Elite to play Ziggs. Diana Trundle. It's crazy how many Trundle bans they have against them. I guess they just think that the Trundle support is super good, and it gives teams a lot of problems. So I mean that's basically it for this video. I just wanted to go through kind of World Elite, see where some of these, see why they were unable to make it to Worlds, because I do believe in their talent long term. I think that they haven't figured out the mid lane. Maybe that's a champion pool thing. I'm not sure how you'd really go about fixing that without knowing what meta we're kind of going into. So next year I'm still very excited about World Elite. I kind of do expect them to make some changes. Well, one change in the mid lane. Unless they think Shanks had a good enough split and is a long-term solution. But would definitely have to change champion pool. And if you have to change champion pool and stuff like that, you know, maybe you're better off having a different mid laner. But that's basically it. So thanks for watching. Like I said, if you could like the video, I'd appreciate that. Drop a comment. It might be beneficial. I'm not sure. I haven't really, you know, pushed liking, commenting, and subscribing on people ever, really. Like I've said it before, but hasn't really been a focus of mine. Let's do that. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.